Holding this family, certainly it's a great opportunity for us to be united as a family this day. And what I want to say that it's been a little season since I've said anything online and so much given to us. But, I guess I'm from the old school, so to speak. I always, concern myself with what we are understanding about the knowledge that we acquire. And that want to make sure step by step that we're digesting it well enough so that we can apply it in our lives. Because without the application, just ain't nothing going to happen. Even though we say that, and we've gained a lot of knowledge, but the application of it to get the results, correct application to get the correct result, we have to admit as a human family, we're falling short. So with that said, I want to start with this book, the Bible, and try to help us to understand the allegorical terminology that's written within and without. And that is simply just to say that this allegorical terminology is given to us by our forefathers, or what we were referred to on this line, as ancestors. And they did a superb job in placing things in the correct place, placing things within these writings through symbols that it has really just baffled humanity for time immemorial.
Right.
So what we're going to do, we're going to start with this third chapter, or really the second chapter. And it starts, I'm not going to start with the first verse, I'm going to just start with some captions in the Scofield Bible. And most of us have Scofield Bible. So I really want us to understand
second chapter of
how it works.
Sorry.
Of Genesis, second chapter of Genesis, but we're going to just deal with some captions.
Okay.
The first caption is going to be over verse 15. First caption is going to be over verse 15. Eitai, put us on. Okay. All right. Over verse 15 in the second chapter of Genesis, it reads, first Edenic covenant. Now, we've been taught about covenants, but this covenant was a test of obedience as Scofield. And as we have been learning, we can see that, this relationship, now this is what we're going to talk about, how relationships have been affected, why they are affected, and why we have not gotten the desired results in our relationships. Because we've had an incorrect relationship with, first of all, ourselves. Each individual has an incorrect relationship with themselves. That's the first thing that you can't have a correct relationship outside or external if you don't have the correct relationship internal. That's just impossible. So because of this allegory, we really thought that we were talking about somebody else. This has to do with Akshar right now. Everything is right now. And as we continue on, hopefully we'll see there is no past, there is no present, because if you got a past and the present, you got duality. And that's what we've been trying to get away from the dual. We got to get into wholeness. So, starting with this first or Edenic covenant. A covenant is an agreement, okay? And then now we say that the old covenant, Old Testament. We broke that covenant. We broke that agreement. And we thought we broke it with the Creator, with some creator outside of ourselves again. We keep always looking at these allegories as something outside of ourselves, but never ourselves. We got to look at ourselves as being what this book is referring to, who is talking to, who's doing the talking. Okay? Then it said that we make a new covenant. And as long as through the scriptures, they've been making covenants and agreements, and been breaking them. Covenant, agreement, and breaking them. That's exact history, if you want to refer to it, of the relationship with man and quote unquote his God, but it's really man and himself. You're making agreements like what we call, New Year's resolution. That's what it has been. So we can see that this simulated reality, this matrix that we're in, we truly have been functioning within it without, full knowledge. So they say it was 8 covenants, and I'm not going to get into the covenant. All you can do is go through, starting with the 15th verse, and you can see these covenants. And they always say that the Davidic covenant, not the Levitical, the Davidic covenant, it overlapped, the 7th covenant, which made the 8th covenant, which was David being the apple of God's eye. But you got to be the apple of your eye. You got to see yourself as what this is talking about. You the Lord, you the God, you the maker, you the husband, and that is simply to say that you have to marry, this dualistic concept that you have been divided into when we emanated into this dualistic, this has to be brought together. We got to eradicate duality.
Yes.
And if we don't do that, there can never be harmony. There can never be oneness. So we're going to skip over to now the 23rd verse of the 2nd chapter. Well, we pick up the 18th. We're not going to read. We're just going to deal with caption. God creates a wife for Adam. Now this begins this relationship that you've been trying to have with somebody external of you, other than your relationship with all things as a union. Verse 18, it states, right over 18, it said God creates a wife for Adam. Then it gives a comparison to Genesis 1:27. That's the male and the female, created he them. But the male and the female is not a man and a woman. That's the energy, of duality that exists within us, we call male and female. This is this dualistic thought process, this dualistic energy, up and down, this vertical relationship, heaven and earth, always these two. And the two was always to be married to become one.
Yes.
We really have not understood that. So then we drop down to verse 23. It said God institutes marriage. So now here comes the marriage, of the union of the two being one. And as Eitai has been talking to us about, we got to understand that which appear to be opposite, they have to be made to be one. So we move now to the marriage so that we can see how things are shaping. And then we're just going to read verse 23. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Now here we go. This creates the duality.
Yes.
This allegorical term here creates the duality. You got man and woman. Woman coming out of man. Feminine energy, masculine energy. Verse 24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. We're given the key right here. You got to be one. Everything has to be one. But now, because you dual, man and woman, your perception, your programming in the matrix, you see things as dual, man and woman. You don't see oneness. But you're trying to, have a relationship called marriage,
Yeah.
to be one.
Right.
Verse 25. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. So here we find both of them, was what? Naked and was not ashamed. So now, this particular reference right here, has been baffling, because when you look at the Hebrew word, it's Aharone, and this word, they switches it, to mean naked sometime, and then sometime it means light. This is the way it's been translated.
Right.
But all of this is, again, a part of the process by which the ancestors has been giving us these symbols, and we, through the translations of these references, we ran into difficulty trying to understand this, concept here of a union of two being one. We call it marriage. Now, since we are now naked and not ashamed, under the next caption right over chapter 3, it says a fall and the promise of redemption. Now, here's where this vertical relationship, it overrides the horizontal relationship of man and woman being balanced, or man and woman being harmonious, or man and woman being unified as one. Here it talks about the temptation and the fall. Now, in the promise of the fall, you promise in this temptation, if you are tempted not to follow this law that governs this vertical relationship, you would be considered, you understand, a violator of this law. Okay? So here, but when we read verse 1, the serpent, we now know that the serpent is nothing negative. Serpent, that's us. That's our stuff. The serpent.
Right.
But it's been made to be evil within the simulated reality in the matrix. So you can't have a relationship with the serpent, with the devil, or with evil, and with God, who represents good. But you got to remember now this duality, God and the devil, the serpent, you understand, and God. You can't have this duality. You got to have this union. So you can't have a relationship with evil, because evil is going to cause your relationship within yourself and within your partner to what? Be, you understand, problematic. This is what we've been struggling with. Now we're going to drop down to verse 7. It's going to read now the caption. It says, second dispensation, conscious, moral responsibility. Now you have a moral responsibility in the simulated matrix, in the false matrix, in the social construct. Because in this your relationship, it is required that you have a moral responsibility to your creator, which is supposed to be your God. But again, you got to remember now, we're not created. We emanated.
That's right.
And you are who it's really, really referring to as this responsible person to a God outside of you. and that's problematic. So continuing on, it says, and the eyes of them both were open, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. So now, here, they acknowledge that, according to their narrative, they acknowledge that they were naked. Now remember, Aharone. Aharone means, you know, as I stated, it means, you know, couple things when it's translated, you know.
I'll put it up, Nasik. Hold on. I'll put it up.
Yeah, put it up, Eitai. Put it up, right.
1 second.
It means to be naked, but it ain't naked like,
Right.
you know, and nobody got on no clothes.
It's
Follow what I'm saying?
Play on words.
Right, it's an allegorical term. It means that you are without a relationship, or you're without being whole. That's really what it means.
Okay.
It really means that you're not totally whole. You know, you are vulnerable. You are naked. You're not, you understand, protected. Your protection, your unity and oneness is what keeps you locked into, you know, the eternal. But without that, you are vulnerable. That's what it's really saying.
The root word, Nasik, is aram. Aram. And that is to be prudent, to be crafty, to be subtle.
But you see again,
right,
subtle and crafty, right. Again, that's why I say, and if you look at it another place, you'll find where it says, now they translate to be naked.
That's so, right.
When you're translating to be naked and you don't see yourself as being what? In violation of, quote unquote, the required relationship with what is, you know, in the simulated matrix, the required relationship calls you to be what? You know, committed, not crafted, to be loyal, and to be what? Moral in it. And if you do not follow that, then you would be considered what? Crafty. You'll be considered, you understand, someone that's a violator because you're breaking the law that governs that relationship. But what we need to understand with that is that you are breaking the relationship with yourself. You're not breaking a relationship with, you know, someone that's external of you. You're breaking the unity of the relationship with yourself. And when you do that, that creates what? The divine interrogation that we find over verse 8. Now, who is doing the interrogating? You're interrogating yourself, trying to find out why things are not going right. Both the woman in the natural sense or in the physical sense, in a relationship, she's trying to figure out why things ain't going right with the husband. The husband, he's trying to figure all this because of this duality. And now you're trying to have some kind of conversation where that you can work things out so you can be, you know, two people in the flesh being one. And that ain't gonna never happen. You know, this oneness has to be energetic, and it has to be, you understand, a commitment, you understand, to this understanding that is necessary for this union to remain one. Not nobody over anybody, nobody greater than anybody, but everybody unified and harmonized with one objective, one goal, you know, and one way to do it. So now we move into the real significant part here now. We're now to verse 14 where it said the second or Adamic covenant. Now we notice here, all of this is after the violation of the relationship that created, you understand, a quote unquote, lack of a better word, divorce. Now, here in the divorce, it then created what we call enmity. Now, this is where we really, really begin to simplify and bring it home here. We're going to start with verse 14. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Verse 15. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. He shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Now, right here, we got trapped in the woman having a seed and the man having a seed. This has nothing to do with a physical woman and a physical man. This is an allegory of you as an individual being dualistic within your process of thinking. And in that process of thinking, your seed is your thought. Sow a seed, whatever the thought is, when you apply it, something's going to come forward. That's the beginning here of how we see all the problems, all the grief, all the sorrow, all the controversy that we as a family, our human family is going through. Whether it be personal relationships that you have or not, the overall human family, we are actually referring to ourselves correctly when we say family, wholeness family. Wholeness family is not a vain word. It's a very, very significant word because this has to be a family relationship. It has to be a family marriage. It ain't marriage just to a man and a woman and that blood kin. See, this is where we got trapped again. Blood kin. But you see, simulated reality gives you this blood kin. Then now you bring blood into it in terms of the sacrifice. So now you can see how, quote unquote, the blood is supposed to be the life of the flesh, but why is so much blood being spilled on the planet? Blood is being spilled on the planet, but as we read where it said the blood would cry out unto this day. But this blood kin thing, all this had to do with the sacrifices of the simulated reality.
Right.
This is where we are. This is exactly where we are. Now here, your thoughts will determine, you understand, the substance that you produce. So now let's look at, right here, where verse 16. You said unto the woman, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and their desire shall be unto their husband, and he shall rule over thee. Now, let's look at this word sorrow, because this gives us, we focus on the conception. Well, the conception is what produces the sorrow. The conception is what produces. If you never are in conception with duality, you cannot produce sorrow. Without being in conception with duality, there is no way to create what we're referring to as sorrow being multiplied. And we see all over the planet, the multiplication of the conditions with everybody. Everybody is trying to find out who has a good relationship. Everybody is trying to find who got a good relationship. Husband ruling over the woman, that ain't work. Woman ruling over the man, that ain't work. So we see all of this here, duality. And we got to understand, duality is the seed that's creating the thought process that keeps us at odds. It's the thought process that causes all kinds of problems, arguments, disagreement, grief, pain, opposition. All of this is caused by duality. So here we find sorrow. We're going to look at the word sorrow. Definition of the word sorrow. Very interesting. And we're going to see how these words, you know, etymologically connected together. Sorrow. It says it's a sickness. The old Slavic language, it's a sickness. Now we didn't see, you know, you can be sick and sick in your sorrow. You can be all down and out and sad and everything and all grieved. But all of this is caused by duality. This ain't caused by nobody else. You're causing it by being in conception with a dualistic way of viewing things. It's just that simple, family. It's just that simple. Sorrow, definition. Sickness, at the etymological, 12th century. A deep distress and regret. Then in parentheses it said, as over the loss of something loved. 2, a cause of grief or sadness. 3, a display of grief or sadness. When we look on the planet today, that's all we see. Everybody is trying to have a good relationship outside of themselves or with an external God, with an external friend, male or female. Everybody. You can't hear, very seldom hear what is called a successful marriage. What is called a successful marriage. Now, let's listen to the synonym of the word sorrow so that we can see. Sorrow, grief, anguish. Now you see angry, anger comes into play because of duality. Always remember this now. It says, woe, problems, regret. You know, you say, oh, I regret the day that I met so-and-so, and I regret this and that. All of this are synonyms of the word sorrow that displayed in the scripture when it said in verse 16 of the 3rd chapter, I will greatly multiply the sorrow of the woman, that he said. And unto the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply for what the woman had supposedly done in respect to, you know, eating of the tree of the knowledge that she was not supposed to. But we know now that the simulated reality, the matrix, this is what, you understand, the structure is. It is what? Created to create this vertical relationship where there's a hierarchical structure where the man is over the woman. So now we know, we said both of them was cursed and they both was naked and they was not ashamed. They both was cursed according to the narrative. So now the woman is cursed, the man is cursed, and everybody now is trying to what? Resolve the curse or resolve the problem by what? Find a relationship other than a union within themselves. Everybody is trying to find an external relationship to what? Resolve the curse. Trying to find an external relationship with an external God. Trying to find this relationship to resolve the problem. And haven't done it. So now, let's look at this sorrow. You know, when we look at the sorrow, and he says, greatly will multiply it. Well, let's see how it's multiplied and how it takes effect. Let's go for a moment to Ecclesiastes 1 and 18. We're going to see how this really, really works in terms of our sorrow being increased. Ecclesiastes 1 and 18. Eitai, you got it up?
Put it up now. It is.
1 and 18.
Yes, it is up.
Okay. Ecclesiastes 1 and 18. For in much wisdom is much grief. And you see, here we just got to it. With much wisdom, it says, bring sorrow. We're saying sadness. Well, you have to ask yourself, how do your increase of knowledge cause grief and sadness? Now, we've been talking about wisdom is, what is wisdom? Wisdom is the correct application of your knowledge. So if you increase your knowledge and you apply that knowledge correctly in the simulated reality, I guarantee you, you're going to increase your sorrow. Now, this is the real, what you call, 1 second here. Give me 1 second.
A paradox.
Paradox. This is the real paradox. This is the real paradox here. Because listen for a moment. It said, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increases knowledge increases his sorrow. So now, how is it that you increase your knowledge, and with your knowledge increase, you continue to increase sorrow? Okay, in the simulated reality, if you create, a condition with somebody that is not workable, in other words, you try to be whole and unified and one, and then they are not unified and whole, and and at one with you, you got what? A situation where you're gonna have disputation, you're gonna have argument, you're gonna have disagreement. Whose sorrow is being increased? You didn't increase because you know that we got to be unified within ourselves. We got to be one holistic, entity within ourselves in order for our grief and sorrow and sadness to disappear. But the individual in the simulated reality, he believes that, just the opposite from that. And he said, your wisdom is not in harmony with my wisdom or my knowledge. I got my mind and you got your mind. So here what? We got two different what? We got what we call the organic knowledge. And I think, but Phil Valentine was talking about this the other day. Yeah. Organic and inorganic, we refer to it as that. This organic and inorganic, both of them is knowledge. You got knowledge and I got knowledge. But what? Then increase our knowledge. One is the simulated and the other is the organic. So you still, at odds. There is no unity. There is no oneness. That's a real paradox. That's a real paradox. So here we find, started in Genesis, with an increase of knowledge being, that which causes, sorrow to be multiplied. Now, but we didn't see this, and we read the 16th verse of the 3rd chapter. And to the woman he said, I'm reading again, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and the desire shall be unto the husband, he shall rule over thee. We didn't see that has anything to do with knowledge. We did not know that the increase of the knowledge in the simulated reality, I don't care how many degrees, college degrees you get, I don't care where you get it from, the increase of that knowledge is only going to what? Keep the division and the sorrow and the pain within that particular structure. That social structure was created purposely in our emanation in here for us to go through this to correct the flaw, that we had to actually live this. And everybody is living it. No one, probably on this phone like this, really, other than us on this phone, really understand that it's the what? Knowledge of duality. The knowledge of duality that was eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is actually causing the problem. It's so simple, but it's still kind of complex to really see that this knowledge of duality is where our problem is. Now let's go to verse 17. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, and sorrow thou shalt eat of it all the days of thy life. So here we find the disobedient in the simulated reality of eating from a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now here we got to go back to, again, this knowledge being dual. Because this duality is going to always keep you at odds within yourself. And if it keeps you at odds within yourself, it's going to keep you at odds with everybody else. Everybody will have to agree to the one thing to prevent arguments, to agree to begin. But you can't, commit to the one thing when you duel. This is why, language, and it doesn't matter, we see the language of duality and the language of wholeness. It's just that simple. The language of wholeness will create a unity of wholeness and oneness. The language of duality will maintain the dualistic relationship. So whatever the marriage is based upon the language, you understand, used, and we use the language to try to resolve the problem. And that's where we're running into serious problems. Now, let's go to 1 Timothy 3 and 16. Going to 1 Timothy 3:16 to tie this all together. 1 Timothy 3:16. First Timothy. Verse 16. Now, keep in mind, we talked about enmity, hatred, we talk about grief, we talk about sadness, and which is all tied to an increase of sorrow. Now we go to 3:16 of Timothy. 1 Timothy. And without controversy, great is the mystery of God. There we go. God was manifest in the flesh, justified in the spirit, seen of angels, preached unto the nations, believed on in the world, and received up into glory. Now, let's look at the word controversy, so that we can really see controversy. Now, the objective is to prevent controversy. And I for myself was always a person, I never liked controversy, but I never understood why controversy exists. People just disagree. That's what we say it. We just don't see things the same way. But there's a reason why we don't see things the same way. The reason, we don't see things the same way because what? We're dualistic in our way of viewing things. And when I don't see it your way, it has to create controversy. Or when you don't see it my way, it has to create controversy. But all of that is a what? The increase of sorrow. It's all tied together. Controversy. Definition. Okay? It means to be disputed mutable, literally to turn opposite. Now, controversy literally says turn opposite. So now, where does the enemy come from? All of a sudden, I said something you don't agree with, or you said something I agree. Now you become what? You know, an enemy. You become someone that what? I'm at odds with. You're in opposition to me, and I'm in opposition to you. And all this is because of what? Dualistic way of thinking, the knowledge of duality. All of this goes back to the knowledge of duality in the Genesis that we just read about. This is the only way. This is the only way to create controversy. And it says, but it says, without controversy, great is the mysteries of godliness. Well, okay, if you say without controversy, what is the mysteries that we have not, you understand, understood? A mystery is something that has not been revealed. It doesn't mean nobody don't know it necessarily. It just means it ain't been revealed, you know. But so now we say, without controversy, great is the mysteries of godliness. So with controversy, then the question becomes, if you got controversy, controversy is caused because of duality, dualistic way of thinking, the knowledge of duality. It automatically creates controversy. So now without controversy, it says the mysteries of godliness, you know, was great. But it said God was manifest in the flesh. Well, God is manifest. You are God. You are the God of the Bible. You are the one that is what? Creating the controversy, because what? You are in duality. Now you understand godliness almost what? Inexplicable to be understood. Because what? You now are the one that's creating the controversy because you in duality. Now we're back to another paradox. I'm creating the controversy because of my dualistic knowledge base, but I'm blaming somebody else because they ain't hearing me and not understanding me. I'm blaming them for not being in harmony with me. And so here, God was manifest in the flesh, justified in the spirit, seen of angels, preached unto the nation, and this is what we've been doing. Believed on in the world and received into glory. Well, this reception up into glory, we got to understand this is the energy of wholeness, the dark energy. This is the dark matter. This is the melanin, you understand, primary life source that is received, you understand, you know, always as is what? As man descended, you know, his whole objective was to what? Ascend again. So everything as above, so below. So why wouldn't it return unto glory? Now, but the return unto glory is where we are today. Now we have to be the ones to return to glory. And return to glory was to make the marriage successful. Now here's how we're going to make the marriage successful. Because we have to understand that the marriage is not successful because the marriage is you marrying the unity and oneness and wholeness within yourself. And until you can do that, we can do that, there can't be a successful marriage with an individual or a family, kinsman, etc., etc. And here's how we're going to make the marriage successful. What we're going to do now, we're going to go to Isaiah, the 62nd chapter. We're going to go to Isaiah, the 62nd chapter. To make this make sense, the marriage. We're going to start with verse 1. Divine unrest until Israel is restored, until this unity is restored within each and every one of us. We understand when we're talking about Israel, we understand this is the allegorical, relationship that Israel was supposed to have, with God. And this allegorical relationship, that Israel was supposed to be the Lord's wife. But that all that has to do with you being unified within yourself. We're going to start with verse 62. And it says, for Zion's sake will I not hold my peace, and for Jerusalem's sake will I not rest, until her righteousness goes forth as brightness, and her salvation as a lamp that burneth. And the nations shall see thy righteousness, and all kings thy glory. And thou shalt be called by a new name, which the mouth of the Lord shall name. Now let's go back to Adam. Adam was given, to name everything. So now Eitai gave us a major key. The tetragrammaton. Yud, Vav, Yud, Vav, Hey, Vav. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey.
Correct.
Okay? Now, the new name is Yud, Vav, Shin, Vav, Hey. New name. All right? So that we can understand now. Because it was given to Adam to name all things. And here you are now, understand that you are Adam. You the Lord. You all of that. Now, verse 3. Thou shalt also be a crown of glory in the hand of the Lord, and a royal diadem in the hand of thy God. All that's you. 4. Thou shalt no more be termed forsaken, neither shall thy land any more be termed desolate, but thou shalt be called Hephzibah, and thy land Beulah, for the Lord delighteth in thee, and thy land shall be married. Now, again, we got these allegories. We have to understand them. Now, let me give you a couple keys here. Go for your Bible. Let's look at the word Hephzibah. And you see there's a reference mark, a J. It says, my delight is in her. Now here, when you hear that, you think, man, Hephzibah, because that's a feminine name, and that's a woman. That's what we thought, because the allegorical symbols here, man and woman, male and female. This is the marriage. So we find here Hephzibah has to be a woman, but we're going to find out that Hephzibah is not a woman. Okay? Then we go and we look at the next word, Beulah. You got Beulah, you got a little small K reference mark. And it said literally married. So Hephzibah is her delight, and Beulah is to be married. Now, let's see here. Let's look at this very close. Let's go back and read 4 again. 4. Thou shalt no more be termed forsaken, neither shall thy land any more be termed desolate, but thou shalt be called Hephzibah. So here you're talking about the land being desolate no more, but thou shalt be called Hephzibah. And Hephzibah says what? To be what? Delighted in. And then it says, and thou land Beulah, for thou Lord delighteth in thee, and thy land shall be married. So you're talking about the land and Hephzibah. Hephzibah, the land, my delight in being married to Judah. So let's look at this now. Let's look at it. Let's go to verse 50, verse 61 of Isaiah. 61st chapter, verses 1 through 3. Brings it out.
Say again, Nasik.
Isaiah 61, verses 1, 2, and 3. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted. This is the marriage, proclaim liberty to the captive, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. This now, all of this has to do with you understanding who you are, and that the dualistic relationship, once you let go of it, you're out of prison. Your broken heart is bound up, you know. Then it says, verse 2, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn. So all the pain that we've been going through, all the sorrow that has been multiplied, is up to you in the day that you do it. You know, this is like an appointed day, but the appointed day has to do with you. The appointed time and the acceptable year has everything to do with when we, you understand, get rid of the dualistic knowledge base and application of it. That begins the process of eliminating the multiplied sorrow. Verse 3, to appoint unto those who mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called the trees of righteousness, but it's the trees of wholeness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified, that you might be glorified. All grief, all sorrow disappears when we've determined the day, the acceptable year, that we're going to eradicate the dualistic knowledge base and application of it. That will eliminate it. Going a little further. 54th chapter of Isaiah. 54th chapter of Isaiah. Starting with verse 4. Israel, captain said, Israel, the restored wife of the Lord. Now, because we're seeing now how things are being restored. Being restored through what? Through the eradication of the dualistic knowledge base. Verse 4. Fear not, for thou shalt not be ashamed, neither be thou confounded. For thou shalt not be put to shame, for thou shalt forget the shame of thy youth, and shalt not remember the reproach of thy widowhood anymore. So all of this has to do with the union of unity and oneness and wholeness within yourself. Verse 5, for thy maker is thine husband. The Lord of hosts is his name, and the Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. Now, all that's saying the same thing. The maker, the husband, you the maker, you the husband, you the Lord of hosts, you know, and you the Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. You must be, you know, the one that causes wholeness to be brought into existence within yourself. You can't look for anybody, you know, a savior, a Lord, some external God, some Mahdi, some Messiah, somebody to what? Save you from yourself. You got to save you from yourself. Verse 5. Read it again. For thy maker is thine husband. You are your maker. You are, you understand, your husband. You're the one that got to merge with so-called male and female. What would be called the right hemisphere in the left hemisphere of the energy, you understand, femininity and masculinity. You have to merge that into oneness. You have to be that who redeems that. No one else can do it. For the Lord of hosts is his name, and the Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, the God of the whole earth. You are the God of the whole earth. You got to understand that. Verse 6, for the Lord has called thee like a woman, forsaken and grieved in spirit and wife of youth, when thou wast refused. Said, well, who did the refusing? We refused the unity and wholeness within ourselves. That what? Ever since we emanated into this, we refused it. No one else refused. We refused this ourselves. We refused to eliminate the dualistic knowledge base and application of it. And as we refused it, we have continued to multiply our sorrow. Continue on, verse 7. For a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. If any mercy is going to be held on anybody, who's going to have mercy on who? But you. We the only ones going to have mercy on ourselves. You can't look at anything outside of ourselves, you know, to bring mercy, to be merciful, to consider, to do the thing that's going to produce the right thing. Verse 8. In a little wrath, I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on thee, says the Lord, thy Redeemer. All of this is referring strictly to you. It has nothing to do with anybody else. Absolutely nothing to do with anybody else. So, again, just to sort of cap it, we start with the Genesis, with a misconception of this allegorical writing that has everything to do with each and every one of us individually. And each and every one of us individually have to unify ourselves within ourselves in order to get out of the simulated reality that continue to produce the multiplied sorrow by being in this vertical relationship, this relationship of a hierarchical structure where somebody as an external God over you, and in the social structure, you got a leadership who is what? Supposed to serve in as the best interest because they are under the same predicament, but not necessarily knowing it. In the same predicament that you under somebody else is under. So you see, this whole thing is a paradox. Leadership, that's leading and those that's being led is in a real paradox. And not understanding that creates the continued multiplication of sorrow. We're going to close with Power verses 4 in the chapter, the database of consciousness. The database of consciousness. We're going to close with that part, the database of consciousness. To verify again how this duality, continues to baffle us and continues to create the problems that we have not understood. Now, many of you would not have the same page. I'm gonna read a small portion of page 231 in my book, and then on 232 close it out. But it's in the chapter, the database of consciousness.
Chapter, Nasik, on all the books, right at the end of the chapter. It's right at the end of the chapter, the database of consciousness. The chapter ends on page 233. So Nasik is just reading a page and a half over from the end of the chapter.
Okay. We're going to start on 231 in mind, where it's talk about the universe, because we want to put this in perspective. Yeah, we start with the universe. The universe is very cooperative, as much as it is not different from consciousness itself. The universe is happy to create whatever we wish to find, quote, out there, in the quote. Now, keep this in mind now with everything that we've just said. The universe is cooperative. You are the universe. You are very cooperative. We are very cooperative. We only, uncooperative when what? We disagree. But as a whole, you are very cooperative, unbeknownst to yourself. We have been cooperating with the simulated reality without knowledge of it.
Right.
And as we continue to see, it says the problem is with the concept of cause itself. This is where our problem is.
Right.
What causes us to cooperate? Which presumes that a time wrap, a sequence, or a string of events will make sense. We just believe that in the process of time, as we continue to cooperate, that through some kind of miraculous way, something caused outside of you causing it, going to create something that's going to make sense. It ain't made sense all these years, and it will not make sense until we understand what's causing it. Duality is causing this problem, not to make sense. Continue. If we step outside of time, there are no causes at all. Key point. Now, we ain't been able to step outside of time. We, been trapped in time, in the time of the simulated reality, in simple. Time is going to bring about a change. Okay? That's been our thinking. There are no causes at all when you step outside of time. Okay? We could say that the manifest world originates out of the unmanifest. That's duality. But that again would be inferring a sequential causal series in time.
Right.
That is unmanifest manifest. Once beyond the wrap of time, with its implicit restrictions of comprehension to terms of mere sequence, there's no backwards or forwards. Now, this is what I'm talking about duality. Backwards and forwards, right and wrong, up and down. All these are concepts of duality. But only if you step out, only within, you understand, the restriction of time. You got to backwards and forwards, you got to past and the future within this time thing. Step outside of time, ain't none of that. Backwards and forward, up and down, right and wrong. It's eternal, immortal. Continuing on. It's then just as valid to say, reciprocally, that the manifest universe causes the unmanifest at a certain level of understanding. This is demonstrably true. If, for example, we look at electrons line up on one side of space and proton lines up on the other in an equal balance. How can we say which side causes the other to line up? Similarly, though healing is a consequence of compassion, not being, sad, not being angry, not being, you understand, in regret, not in sorrow, but compassion is not its cause. Compassion is tied to it, but it's not the cause. In an energy field of 600 or higher, almost anything will heal. Now, we've been talking about third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, and on. Now, we have to understand these are levels of consciousness, energy levels of consciousness. And you get to 600, on almost anything that's problematic can be resolved. Problematic. But this is what? Consciousness now, a high level of consciousness, moving outside of duality. Now we're going to skip over to the next page, page 232. We're going to pick up at the top where it says, time then is much like a hologram that already stands complete. It is a subjective sensory effect of a progressively moving point of view. This is what time has to become. A subjective sensory effect of a progressive moving point of view, not a past and a future, not today, tomorrow, but a progressive moving point of view. There's no beginning or end to a hologram. That's how we got to see it. There's no beginning and no end. Immortality has to exist. It's already everywhere, complete. In fact, the appearance of being unfinished, quote, end of quote, is part of its completeness. Even the phenomenon of unfoldment, quote, end of quote, itself reflects a limited point of view. When you talk about the unfoldment and the foldment, enfoldment, the unfoldment, the manifest and the unmanifest, we're talking about time cycle. It says there is no enfold or unfold universe, only a becoming awareness. So now awareness takes us beyond the level of consciousness. Now you're conscious, but you're aware of your consciousness. You're aware now of things unfolding in a continuous way as opposed to a beginning and an end, a yesterday and today. Our perception of events happening in time is analogous to a traveler watching the landscape unfold before him. Similarly. But to say that the landscape unfolds before the traveler is merely a figure of speech. Nothing is actually unfolding. Nothing is actually becoming manifest. There's only the progression of awareness. So now we increase, our unity, our wholeness, our oneness. We then continue to go up the scale of the energy levels, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, on up, into what? Total activation. There's only the progression awareness. So we have to continue to what? Increase our consciousness. This is why now I see why they had to play with the idea of the mind and consciousness. Because the mind, going back to what Eitai mentioned a few days ago about increase, about the brain classes, it was called Uh,
Grow the mind.
help me with it. Yeah, the truth of how to grow your mind, the truth of how to produce your brain, you know. So that article, going back there, they had to make us understand that the mind was something that you had to grow. But it wasn't growing the mind. It was about what? The brain being what? You understand? Being coming whole. And what you have in the synapses connected, you understand, with an increase of knowledge of unity and oneness and wholeness, that knowledge would cause, you understand, things to become more unified, you to become more knowledgeable, you to become more aware, but not the mind. So they had us thinking that it was the mind that we had to grow, but it was what? The increase of our knowledge base that would give us a knowledge of unity and oneness and wholeness that will cause the brain, you understand, to what? Increase the knowledge. They call neurogenesis. Neurogenesis was about increasing, you know, the brain circuits, new cells within the brain, not, you understand, the mind, because the mind was nothing physical to increase anyway.
That's correct.
It was nothing to develop. So it was the brain circuits of the neurogenesis that they knew that had to increase, that had to what? Continue to, you know, develop in order for one to become more conscious, one to become more aware. Closing out. These paradoxes, the paradoxes of unfoldment, enfoldment, manifest, unmanifest, you know, all of these terms, you know, right, wrong, up, down, heaven and earth, these are paradoxes. And he said these paradoxes dissolve in the greater paradigm that includes both opposites, when opposition as such are only related to the location of the observer. Now, this is when they, in quantum physics, came up with the observer. So now we see how the observer actually causes things to change. You being the observer, you actually are the ones that causing the things to change. So it says here, it says opposition such as only related to location of the observer. But now let's ask the question here. It says this transcendence of opposition occurs spontaneously at conscious levels of 600 and above. So in other words, as you go up the ladder, you in consciousness, you get beyond opposition. And as you get beyond duality, now everything becomes whole. Because if you say, as he go on to say, the notion that there's a knower and a known is itself dualistic. So if you still have the knower and the known, or you got the thing that you're looking at and you're the observer, other than you being it, you being everything, you got dualistic way of viewing things. And when that dualistic way of doing things, it's going to continue to create the pain, the suffering, you know, the sorrow, the multiplication of sorrow, all these things, the disunity, the disharmony, the loss of a holistic relationship within yourself, a loss of a holistic relationship within the family structure with another individual, so forth and so on. This will continue, except we get beyond this dualistic way of viewing things. I read in context again. These paradoxes evolve in the greater paradigm that includes both opposition, where in opposition as such are only related to the location of the observer. Only when there's an observer you got opposition. This transcendence of opposition occurs spontaneously at consciousness levels of 600 and above. The notion that there is Noah, quote unquote, and a known is in itself dualistic, in that it applies a separation between subject and object. There never can be a separation between a subject and the object, between you and anything, which again can only be inferred by the artificial adoption of a point of observation. Anytime you what? Make, you understand, that distinction that you are different from anything, you create an observer. And when you create the observer, you create the separation between you and wholeness, you and oneness. And I close out by saying the maker of all things in heaven and on earth, that's you. Of all things visible, that's you, and invisible, that's still you, stands beyond both, includes both, and is one with both. That has to be us. You are invisible and you are visible. The invisible element is the dark energy, the dark matter, the black dot. You understand? That energy that's responsible for all things being brought into existence. But then that what invisible becomes visible. But it is never separate. It is never divided. It is still one. And once we can get that, you know, this will help us to understand how to resolve all the problems that we're going through. Existence is therefore merely a statement that awareness is aware of its awareness and of its expression as consciousness. So I think to read those portions over again in line with everything that was said, I think that it will help us to understand that this duality has been a major obstacle, and not understanding it has created all the problems, internal, external, individually, collectively, universally, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I want to say wholeness to the family, and thank everybody for participating.